Hello, everyone, and welcome to our community meetup. We have an interesting topic today. Actually, will be quite dominated by one person, probably, or two. But it's a team effort of multiple people working on those two topics. We allow a little bit more time. I think they're quite complex, and hopefully, maybe we can have some discussions around those topics. And then if there are any other topics towards the end, I think we can squeeze them up. So let's not talk too much about it. The main person who will present today, Krzysztof. We will talk about serverless, Kyma Serverless, the new, let's say, approach that we took, and then we will have a prototype, basically using GitOps in serverless. So this is a serverless kind of community meetup. Cool, Krzysztof. So, get up.
Hello, everybody. I will start to share my screen. Can you see it? Yes,
I see.
Cool. As you said, Valentin, maybe I will be talking the most about these subjects, but serverless is definitely a team effort. And when we started with Kyma, we have several twists and turns already in the domain of serverless. And as you know, at the very beginning, it was based on kubeless. And recently we tried to adopt Knative serving as a dependency for serverless module. And now yet another turn in this domain happened, because what we tried to do is to put the serverless on diet a little bit, and to try and implement a serverless solution that is based on bare metal Kubernetes components. And first of all, let me try to show you a little bit of diagrams and to explain what actually has happened. Here's the architecture of the serverless in the latest 1.13 release. It still consists of Knative service. As you can see, a function controller.
Krzysztof, please make it a bit bigger.
Okay, right.
In the browser. Well, that's good.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Cool. In the function controller is holds the definition of what code snippet, what code should be run as a function, and then this code is being built, and then we used Knative service to actually run the deployment, run the code. And as you can see, the Knative serving has its own type, Knative service, and the controller for that type has a lot of functionalities, like revisions of K-service. It has some complex routing policies to determine which actually revision should be hit. And it was working. It's still working, right, in Kyma 1.13. However, we decided to give it a try with bare metal Kubernetes components to that. And I will now switch to this architecture diagram that is coming from master branch, where you will.
This is already merged, right?
That is already merged. Yes, that's already merged on master branch. However, it's not yet released. It will be in the next Kyma release. And I will talk about later on what could be the implications for your functions. But let's focus on this diagram, and you won't see any Knative components. It's much simpler. We don't use the versions of service. It's really simple. That we simply the function controller creates a deployment. We we try to steer the scaling of the function using horizontal pod autoscaler. We expose the service with a Kubernetes service, not Knative service. So this is a lot of simplifications. Now let's think about why we did that. And there was an issue created in the GitHub to, let's say, to prove the to document the argumentation for that, and to also trigger a discussion about that. Let's not read it, but let's just talk about the bullet points why we did that. And as you know, we are not developing it for ourselves. We have some users, right? And recently we have defined personas, and one of the persona is Matthew, who is a cloud native software engineer. And during the workshops, we realized that he needs a thin multi-cloud runtime. And what we have learned trying out Knative serving for the purpose of serverless is that it's not necessarily thin, and it's complex. And I know that we assume that Matthew is an experienced cloud native engineer. He has a lot of knowledge about CNCF landscape, but maybe for somebody who is less experienced in the CNCF landscape, it's hard to comprehend really all the possible modules and dependencies that are used, and it's really important for him to learn how things work internally. So the simpler solution, the better, and the more lightweight solution, the better, because he probably doesn't want to pay a lot of money for a very simple function, because we are focusing on simplicity in serverless, and that's what we need. And with the deployment service horizontal pod autoscaling, we did a POC, and it proves that it really works. So it's what we gained is actually simplicity. It will be simpler to maintain, and simpler for Matthew to comprehend really how it works. And as we know, the Knative is a big product. It's a project, right? It's a whole programming model, and it comes with a lot of features. And we actually didn't use those features for Kyma Serverless. For example, this versioning of K services. The Knative serving was revisions were not the ones that were actually keeping track of revisions of Matthew's code. So it's not really this use case. What we need, we actually need revisions on this level, on function control level, and this is what we will try to well achieve with GitOps and with the topic that I will present you later on. Yeah, and as you could see in the diagram, it was built with the Kubernetes component. So the building blocks to really achieve a serverless solution are available already on Kubernetes. And what we also gained is more freedom to upgrade Kubernetes and Istio version. Knative also has some dependencies for Istio and Kubernetes versions. So if we don't use it in a serverless module, then we have more freedom to upgrade Kubernetes and Istio versions. When will it happen? So as you could see, it was already merged to master. With the next Kyma release, it will be part of the next Kyma release, and it's probably the most interesting for you to learn about what would be the implications for you. Knative serving has a capability to scale the deployments to 0. If we have stripped that and we don't use Knative serving, then we don't have scale to 0 out of the box. So we want to fill that gap, and there is an investigation already ongoing, which of the available autoscalers for Kubernetes will fit the need. We try to collect requirements at this point of time. How those autoscalers works that are available, which metrics they take into account, that will be then later evaluated, and the autoscaling will be done. If they support scale to 0, we really need to collect all the requirements in order to pick one, because I understand that for some users who want to use serverless, there might be different metrics could be important, right, to base the autoscaling strategies. So we need to understand the needs. For some, scale to 0 might be an absolutely must-have. For some, it's not really necessary. So need to understand the needs. And yes, for we already have some solutions in mind. Like, for example, Michał was mentioning KEDA. Anish was proposing Osiris. We are investigating and evaluating options, but the requirements, so what really Matthew needs is the key indicator here. So if you have some really must-have requirements for auto-scaling capability for serverless, then please contribute to this issue. And the migration. So what will happen with if you upgrade Kyma 1.14 to a newer version? Luckily, the migration is fully automated. Right? There is an upgrade job running automatically, and you don't need to do any manual steps to make sure that the functions that you defined for previous versions of Kyma will still work on the thin and lightweight version that will come with the next release. And now I would like to open here for questions, because you probably have some.
I want to ask Krzysztof, just one side. You say we want to be more lightweight, and we were not using the case native serving features. Are we just kind of reinventing now our own? So are we going bare bone with these functions, or this is just enough for the type of use cases that we plan to do for our
for the requirements right now, for the type of functions?
Are we missing something? Are we just kind of?
At the moment, the only thing that could be missing is the scale to 0. But as far as I know, well, it's all about probably the operational costs. And there's one thing that you could have a cheap solution by having scale to 0, but also you could have a cheap solution, something that is not eating up too much money in your hyperscalers. It's also something that is simpler and lighter, doesn't include big sidecars to the functions. So it's a balance that we'll need to find actually here. We would like to investigate autoscalers that would allow scale to 0, because it might be an important use case for some of the users, right? At the moment, it's not there. And it's like we stripped all the features that were not used by us and gained a lot of simplicity in the whole architecture. And now it's like a canvas where we can paint some new features and, for example, invest in the different auto scaling mechanism than the one that was out of the box available via Knative serving. We could think about what the CNCF developer wants, how he wants to write functions, that we should maybe support GitOps. Yeah, it's a bit it's a twist in the direction that reducing the features that were not used and make the solution simpler in order to really start the new features from a simpler level.
So basically, this will enable us for future basically easy updates, or let's say features that we want, because we are not so tightly coupled with the implementation. Okay. Yeah. And basically the power, or the, let's say, the resources that we are saving by reducing some of the components that are needed, in a way kind of balance out with the scale to 0 missing out. So we say it's kind of, you know, the same, but we are still investigating the scale to 0 to bring it back. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think most of the people in the team, most of the people in the call are basically from the team. I'm trying to figure out if somebody from outside, but most of us we are up to date with this process, because it was reviewed, and also we were following the issue there. But I will ask another question, maybe in the name of the people that they try to you know, they will upgrade in soon, and they will ask, hey, what will be the change for me? You mentioned that this will be automatically migrated. Should we expect any downtime or something like this while this is in translation, or, you know, switching from one to the other? What will be the experience there?
I think some downtime is there, right? I would like to ask somebody from the team to jump here, if this was already measured.
Okay, maybe I will help. And then speaking, there will be a tight downtime at maximum, I don't know, 5 minutes or something like that, because we need to remove all the Kubernetes services and to switch them to deployments. So it can take some time before it will be ready. And also we need to migrate service binding usages and API rules. So as I said, maximum 5 minutes.
Okay, so we expect some downtime then. Do we have any suggestion for that? How people should handle it, or better to choose the upgrade window when it's most, you know, the traffic is less?
The traffic is less.
Yeah. Cool.
Are we still installing Knative serving with 1.14, or are we not installing it anymore?
Yes, it is still in the cluster because it is still used by eventing. So it is not removed from Kyma. It is just not used by serverless.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, but the Knative eventing version is still on 0.12 and serving is on 0.14. So there is a discrepancy in the version, and as of now, we are not planning to upgrade it further.
So then when we kind of made when we made we said more lightweight, Knative will still be there overall in the cluster. It's just a couple of additional components that come with the serving part will not be there, correct?
Right, no, part of
lightweight.
eventing. So it's an integral part of eventing, and we cannot get rid of it. I mean, we need to use it. So that's one of the reasons that Knative serving charts are still part of the source code.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the functions are more lightweight because they are not generating that much of resources when you create the function. So just a few simple resources, not that plenty as you wanted before. So this is the improvement is in only the serverless part, let's say.
Should we expect faster response time? I remember, Michal, you did it last time, you did a demo, and it took some time until the build pipeline kicked in and the changes in the functions were revealed. Are we seeing any improvements there with this new approach?
Build was not the part of the migration because build was already on pure Kubernetes jobs, and the build depends highly on the resources available in the cluster. But build takes, I don't know, less than 20 seconds, so it's quite fast, let's say. And build is only made once when you create or update the function resource. It is not created every time when a function is scaled up or scaled down. So then it is much faster because we just scale the deployment, we add pods on something like that. We don't create any new deployments, new services, and other parts. We just scale pods.
So for the developer that's, let's say, probably I don't know how many they use the interface, the web interface to write their functions. Probably the next talk, Krzysztof, you propose something new. But if I would use the interface, would I see an improved in speed of reaction, or would be kind of the same as the previous version?
It will be much faster search when you create. Well, the build phase was not touched, but this, let's say, the serving part was touched. And right now we create only few pure simple resources. We don't need to wait for other resources as it was with Knative serving. So that part will be much faster than before. So I don't know. I don't remember exactly how long it took with Knative serving, but currently it is less because we create less resources in the cluster. And we don't need to wait for sidecars and other parts.
Cool. I don't want to take monopoly. I would have another question, but if there's anybody out there who would like to pick it up. Okay, I will add it because I was playing lately with the functions, and I was using the cheapest GCP machines that are out there. And at one point in time, because of the serverless part, you know, the memory was not sorry, what was it, the memory or the CPU? I cannot remember. Was that with this new movement, let's say with this new change, would we have less resources on the cluster that are needed for Kyma to run? Would we expect a little bit on so people can use, let's say, cheaper workers?
Not exactly, because
No. Okay.
The part that consumes most resources, it was the build phase, and the job requires lots of CPU and memory. But I think in the future you will be able to configure as much the resources requirements and limits per function for build. So you will be able to, I don't know, you will give less resources to function, then the build will take longer, but you will need less smaller machines. So it will depend on your configuration. Right now, it's configured during Kyma installation, but definitely it needs to be exposed to the user.
Okay, so basically the build part was the more demanding, and that's still there. Cool, thanks.
And the requirements for this build job were somehow learned empirically, right? We need to make some kind of judgment of how much resources is needed to satisfy all kinds of functions. And as Michał said, in the future we plan to customize that, so you'll be able to provide the code, but you'll be also able to influence the way how this function is built, and maybe reduce the resources needed to build your function, because maybe your function is so tiny and simple to build that it doesn't require a very powerful job.
Cool.
The problem with building part is also that it uses Docker client to build images, which it in itself needs some kind of minimal resources. So the resources that we are using right now are comparably low to what probably some kind of big Java monolith application would need. So I would expect in the future though to increase the resources than to lower it, because if we lower it, then the build time increases significantly.
I was just checking the time. I think we are quite okay with this one. We have another part, Krzysztof, right, regarding the GitOps.
Yes.
Maybe we can pick that up, and then if there are questions, they are somehow related, right? And then if there are questions, we can pick them towards the end.
Absolutely.
So,
okay. So at the moment, if you want to write a lambda function and have it running on Kyma, then you need to either provide the code directly in the function CR, using CLI, or you can use the web interface. So something like that. and that's not super convenient for a developer, right? And at least that was the assumption. Maybe, yeah, maybe you can say that. Would you, yeah, would you like to continue writing the source code here in the web IDE? Probably not, right? Because all the developers have their own favorite IDEs, and so does our Matthew. He wants to. He actually, when defining the persona, and we realized that he actually hates such kind of code editors in the web, and he wants to just use his own favorite IDE and store his code in GitHub, because that's where the code should be, not in some web IDE here. So and this is what we want to address, this pain, and therefore we have started with more like a GitOps approach for the user to define Lambda functions. So he will be able to really code and hack his Lambda, his glue code, and then push it to Git. And now what needs to be done for our serverless to pick it up and serve it? Then we have started the POC, and here is the issue, which will be also great now to confront and to validate the requirements. Before we jump into any technicalities and the API, it's really maybe essential to explain what are the requirements for this POC, for the GitOps approach for serverless. That the function code should be versioned at Git, right? But still, if somebody is using Kyma for hackathons and want to really hack a simple Lambda just for now, not necessarily to keep the revisions and to keep it for later, then we can preserve the possibility to use the web UI. The function could be fixed to a specific branch, and optionally to a commit, if that would be rather fixed one. But in case the commit hash is not fixed, then the function is being rebuilt every time there is a new commit to the branch. We would like to support the private repositories, so there we have to somehow allow to configure a secret in case Matthew wants to develop his Lambda in his IDE and push to Git, but he wants to push it to a private GitHub. He doesn't want to share it. Yeah, and actually, yeah, for the sake of POC, we are not yet adding the support in the UI, so it's just possible to configure it using CLI. What do you think? Did we catch the requirements correctly? Is there anything missing? Because we were trying to fill the shoes of Matthew, and because we are also developers, but maybe you have a very important requirements which we missed.
Maybe just let me pick it up for people that might see it on YouTube or you know, jump in later. This is a POC, right? This is a proposal. This is an exploration. Yes. What we do now is we ask the question, what if we would use GitOps? And those are some of the requirements that we came up to. Obviously, this is a issue, it's open and anyone can contribute. So this by far is not ready, right? It's work in progress. It's not even added yet to the code. It's just more like an idea of a POC and see where we go next, right?
Exactly.
So I guess on this line of thoughts, feedback is more than welcome at this stage, actually, and has all the room in the world to be implemented or, you know, explored. Correct.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have implemented, and I would like to ask Marcin to jump in and present the stage of the POC and what will be the API for Matthew.
Okay, thanks. So let me share my screen. I will actually show you the overall architecture, and I would like to also ask you about your feedback at the So without further ado, the overall architecture of our POC is like pretty like this. We have inside Kyma we have multiple namespaces. Our
And
function control is up. Sorry.
Could
Yeah.
you make it bigger a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
A second. Is it good enough? Or okay,
Perfect.
Great. So we have multiple namespaces, and actually our operator is controller is operating in Kyma system, and functions are created for specific namespaces. This is this is not only for convenience, so users can have dedicated namespaces, but also it's for a security reason. And actually, what we learned is like we need to have all those objects that are responsible or that Matthew needs to have for the particular namespace for function in this namespace. I mean, both function CRD and repository CRD should be here along with credentials, right? Second thing is that the function control is actually doing exactly the same what Matthew could manually do. It's just like doing it for him. And the function controller checks for changes in each reconcile cycle and loop. And actually, if there is a difference between the desired state and the current state, it applies those changes to function controller. So we also prepared, actually, sorry, one more thing, user also, of course, it's interacting with Git from the outside, so it's not a part of any proprietary API, whatever. He just simply commits stuff, and it's actually visible for a controller. This is the proposal for API. We thought that since it's a since GitOps itself, it's a wide topic, and actually it's a thing that can be adopted in multiple places in Kyma, it would be wise to lift the to add the CRD, sorry, for this repository for entire Kyma, because this way everybody will be benefiting from this, right? The changes in the function custom resource itself are backwards compatible. That means that we can have previous functions working exactly the same as they were. However, there are a couple of changes. We added, we thought that it would be good to have a dedicated type of a place that the sources are stored to meet the requirement for multiple functions which are sitting in the same repository. We had to add this base directory, which is showing exact path to the function sources. We didn't want to have any limitation as it comes to forcing user to have some layout of repository. That's why we also asking to provide a Docker file, which is in context of this repository, of course, and the commit and the branch. Those are also for meeting the requirements to be able to sit on some dedicated commit or follow the head in case of this field being empty and having a branch selected. This approach actually will help us to overcome some limitations that we already have in the implementation, namely the size of the sources will be can be much bigger, and actually there are also other benefits from the GitOps itself. So actually, what do you think, guys?
This is the idea how we would try to model it, how to point the source for a function. Hopefully, we could show something running on the next meetup. But at the moment, yeah, it's like a sanity check with the community if the API looks good, if the concepts look good. So your feedback is really more than welcome here.
was just wondering if we are the first one doing this, or there are already other solutions out there, and are we aligning somehow our CRD with what other implementation? Is it compatible or somehow like that? I'm just wondering if.
Actually, we need to start with something, and this is like kind of something that we can implement relatively quick, and actually this can be a start point to learn if it's a good idea, if it's good enough, or maybe this way. So of course there are tools that are like doing this, but actually we didn't found any which would suit our needs like perfectly. So this is the second thing.
Can this support multiple version if I want to do A/B testing or whatever rollback? Or
Yeah, this is the exactly the control is like given to Matthew, right? It's since he's the guy who writes the functions, and he has his own namespace. He has a control over this, so he can switch between branches. He can kind of put his own branch to test some things, and actually it's like at the end of the day, it's also if you have it like fixed to some commit. You can also manually change the moment when you update something. So the control is like pretty good in my opinion.
And to answer the question, if we are the first to do that, of course not. I mean, there's of course something called like cloud functions in Google Cloud, which allows you to provide a code in an inline editor, but you can also point to a cloud to a repository to select the branch, the tag, the directory within the source. So it's a similar. Of course, we cannot. We could go even further and compare the API, but I think it's satisfying the same needs from the user perspective as these Google Cloud functions.
So how would be my workflow as a developer? What do I have? I have a very particular folder structure with some files which are required, and I push them to a Git. There's a webhook, or can we maybe go? Okay.
This is actually the flow of, let's say, the universal flow of the GitOps, right? So you have some code, you have some repository which is like somewhere. Unit tests and integrations are in the pipeline of CI/CD, right? And build and deploy it SaaS. So this is like kind of you just push the code to the repo. Your CI is doing the unit test. It's built in our in Kyma, and actually, yeah, this is pretty much the flow.
But the unit test. So basically, from here, what's the part that we're taking care of? We don't.
We do not support the unit test and integration test as a kind of in any solution, but there is a kind of place for someone to implement.
So right. The green parts are ours, right? The build and the deploy.
Yeah.
And actually, the code and the Git repos are somewhere else. So just the green squares are
exactly. Mm-hmm. Maybe I will also share with you how the current custom resource definition looks like. And actually, if you want to make a function, you need to specify a source code and dependencies. And this is how the function is introduced to a cluster, right? Sorry, to infrastructure, and this will give us much more flexibility because we can come up with different types of. I'm just like we are open for extending this idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Any other questions? Well, I mean, if they're not, I think we could do definitely love to see more like a working demo. very soon to see what, how does it feel for a development. And I do have a question regarding what are the main challenges that you guys are, still trying to check and overcome with this POC, and maybe, with this opportunity, trying to reach out to other people that would like to contribute and help out. So what are the major, let's say, not roadblock, but challenges that they are still ahead?
Right now we are in the integration phase, so we are just checking, we are connecting everything together, and actually there were no kind of big problems that we've encountered. This is like as this architecture, it's really the simplest, I believe, approach that we could take to meet all the requirements. So we try to do it as simple as possible to be able to do it in some period of time. Actually, right now it's actually the security is a big question. We are going to do it with the credentials that are going to be in the secrets that are in the in namespaces. Maybe this is worth auditing and checking. For sure. And actually, maybe one thing which is like kind of thing that came just to me, it's like right now the limitation for this approach, at least for the library that we used to communicate with Git, is that the size of the repository matters to the response time of this check for changes. This is like something that we definitely see that there's a correlation. If the bigger repositories, the slower the response we will get. So maybe this is the one thing that's also worth mention here.
For me, the biggest challenge is still to really define the requirements. I mean, in this POC, we are giving the user full control. This is more like, here's the code, and please build it and run it according to my Docker file, right? This is what we are giving him, the possibilities, right? And this is probably suitable for Matthew, who is a very experienced CNCF developer, and he's very fluent with Docker, etc., etc. For me, the question here is also if we could also add some convenience to it. So something like, here's the code, it's in Node.js, just run it, I don't care how. So if we should have some built-in convenience, like a build packs or preset Docker files, that's something that we still need to investigate. If you have an input, an insight on this one, that will be also really, really appreciated, because we might target not only those super experienced CNCF developers, but there might be some business application developers, right, who are maybe, like I said, just this is the code, it's in JavaScript, it's in Node.js. I'm not sure how it should be run, just run it.
This smells a little bit like the Heroku build packs that I used a long time ago, right? You just say git push and you say, okay, take this build pack, and then but what about if we would like to combine those? Let's say, I have two, 30 lambda functions, right? Do I have to have it for each one a different repo? Or I've seen something regarding that it should be in one repo.
I believe this is the requirement was that to have multiple functions inside one repo and to not limit the functions only for one repo. So it's like you can have both, like couple of functions in one repo and others just like with dedicated repositories, for example. So it's like pretty flexible as it comes to how you want to store it, right? So you didn't want to have we didn't want to force someone to have any layout at all. It's just like you have to declare it for sure, right? Where is the code? What is the name of the repo? Where are the credentials? How can we access it? But the way how you organize it is like completely your way.
Okay, so in this way, for example, if I would have a more complex application and I have a couple of lambdas, but then I would like to roll back to a different state, then it would be advisable to be in one repo, because then you can point to a commit and then you can roll back the entire, let's call it, application based on multiple lambdas. But if I would have it distributed, then it would be harder to have a state, to roll back. I will have to figure out each lambda function, right, to roll it back. Or
yes, exactly. This is like kind of maybe it would be also good to know what is the common use case. I mean, what is if it's like one repo mostly, or it's like multiple repos. That would be good, because we could, I believe, think of the way how we could even improve it. But I believe the solution which is presented right now, it's open enough to be good enough in most cases. I mean, it's you always have end up with some corner cases, but I believe this provides to do really wide range of use cases. Right.
Yep.
Could we not use this model to deploy microservices as well as functions, lambdas? I don't think we should focus totally on lambdas with this.
I believe the lambda is a kind of a natural place to test this. I mean, it's this approach, the GitOps, right? It's a great place to start with, because it's like people who are using it, it's like they kind of think that they by default should have it. I think, but I believe we can expand it, and we can. This is actually not my decision, but I could imagine that there is a place for this approach in also more places in Kyma, right?
I
This
think
is
it's not
just
it is how CNCF developer wants to write functions and microservices. So I agree with you that it's like a sandbox, and it's like a playground for this function use case. But it will be, if it will be successful, then we will probably aim to give more GitOps like development experience across Kyma.
I know from talking to customers that they're asking how to do CI/CD for microservices as well as lambdas, and looking at this, it looks, the model is there where you could see, as well as a function controller, something like a microservices controller that created the deployment and the service and the pod for you based on your code in Git if you supplied a Docker file.
This is like the Git can be source of truth for pretty any code, right? The approach is actually universal.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could offer like a single way of doing it for lambdas and microservices.
We definitely need to have a hands-on experience for this, because I believe that this is like pretty beneficial. If we do this in the smaller scope, we will benefit from having and checking all the problems, and we will have more knowledge about this, right? We will be more aware actually in this. If we want to expand this, we will already familiar to at least some problems.
Cool stuff. I think we are approaching the 4 o'clock time. We can still afford a couple of questions. I just want to ask first if there's any other topics that we'd like to discuss in this meetup, or we want to, use this opportunity to address the community, if not now live, later on YouTube. No, okay. Well, if not, then are there any questions for the presentation today, Marcin and Krzysztof, that they did? Cool. Well, then I think we can then wrap it up. Really nice presentation, and then very excited about these GitOps. I think we have some interesting feedback from the audience also regarding maybe having a unified way of deploying this. I think Git approach is it's a very it's easy to understand flow, and I'm quite curious to see how this ends up in Kyma. Do we have any time frame for this? Do we have any let's say, when do we expect things to progress? So let's assume that this POC proves and checks the main concerns. Do we have any idea what comes next, or Krzysztof?
Yeah, then we simply productize it and continue with it with the next release cycle after the POC. So
also immediately
we don't want to park it, and we just want to productize it as soon as possible.
Yeah. So I guess if you guys want it, just contribute to this issue. I will link it into the comments description and also on the document, and then it could end up quite well in our next release. Well, not maybe next one, but 2 releases down the road.
Following, yeah.
Okay.
Finger crossed.
Well, thank you very much then. Thank you very much for the presentation. Agenda is going to be open, so please add anything that you would like to talk. It's very possible the next week we will have a presentation from outside of the team. So let's see how that works out. But if there are any other topics, please add them after to the agenda. And we see each other in 2 weeks then. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.